Hello, and welcome back to the Waikaro series. My name is Ebube, and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. This week on Pluribus, we wake up with Manousos and go to sleep with Carol, as does the rest of the world, it seems, all wrapped in a very special package that I like to call Rabana. Looks like the internet does, in fact, get everything it wants sometimes. Carol takes a different approach this week with the Hive as she starts to ask questions and use her skills as a storyteller in a way that we can only describe as a return to basics. She is going back to the drawing board, and you know what? Perhaps art isn't dead after all. I am excited to jump into all this, and I'm even more excited because Cris is here to do it with me. What up, Cris? You are just in time.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Maybe my favorite episode. This was everything
Really?
I
That
could
good,
have wanted.
huh?
For me, yes. For my fan service, it came through.
Okay. Okay. What was your favorite thing about the episode then, if that's the case?
I mean, I just think Carol and Zosia is genuinely just one of the most fascinating, complex, juiciest, messiest relationships that we could be exploring. And I like that they gave us the time and space to explore all the interesting and messy and romantic facets of that in this episode. I'm glad they gave the time and space.
Yeah, it's really cool, honestly. I think watching them actually get to know each other, because Carol is a little less apprehensive in this episode and maybe a little sorry. I kept feeling like she was just a little bit close to apologizing for almost killing her. She didn't quite end up doing it, but I know that she probably wanted to. And I feel like the world, the Hive, the Joined, felt that from her. So that was nice. And, you know, this was an episode of, dates, really. Like, it was like, it really felt like a first date right up until the end of that first meeting where she's like, we really had a good time with you. And I'm like, wow, this is hilarious. Because then they don't know what to do with each other at that point. It's like, okay, where do I go? What should we do now? And it's like, okay, where do you sleep? And then they go there. And it's so interesting to me that, yes, of course, they're doing exactly what I assumed. They are all living in spaces where they can be as efficient as possible because they don't need personal space that much anymore because they are all one person, so to speak. I guess they wouldn't quite describe it that way, but it's interesting because I feel like as fans, people, even though they never thought about it, would have been like, maybe Zosia has her own house, because I think people who watch the show have given Zosia a certain level of importance and a certain level of prominence in their minds as far as the narrative and as far as Carol is concerned. So to see that Zosia literally just lies down with everybody else and just gets up almost like they're cogs in a machine was very interesting and probably kind of fascinating, maybe even jarring for Carol, because she's like, okay, this is something. Like, I had them turn on the grid for an entire city for me, and they're all just like lying down on the floor of the stadium. Like, that was funny.
Yeah, I think she feels bad for her a bit, because I think throughout this episode,
She's like, come live with me.
we'll get and I think we'll get that throughout this episode, especially when we talk about the pronoun usage and her trying to get her to use the I pronouns. I think she doesn't like seeing her in the space where she's reminded that she's part of the Hive. It's a lot easier for her to process when they're alone, and it's easier to try and see her as a sort of individual versus part of this group. One shot I did take note of is where they're helping an old woman lay on the ground.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, there's no exceptions here, not even for the elderly, which is interesting. And then obviously no special privileges for the chaperones.
The chaperone. It's very funny, to be honest. And I think it's kind of like a well-designed narrative, to say the least, because there are so many things that they could have done differently as far as the show is concerned. But they decided to give us a glimpse into how the entire Hive would operate. Basically, if Zosia wasn't Zosia, like if Zosia was literally anybody else, any other physical human being, this would still be the same thing. And Carol would just have gotten somebody else. But they chose the person who looked most like, what Carol might want. And it's interesting to me that actually works. Like, it ends up working out in the way that they hoped it would. It makes her comfortable. It makes her, even though she's a little bit apprehensive about it, that's more to do with her self than really them, because she's like, okay, I don't like that I like this. She asked that question when she drugged herself in, I believe it's episode 4. And she's like, okay, what do I do? And they basically enter this series of dates that then leads to what I can only describe as a common law partnership because they're kind of just living together, and yeah, they're learning about each other in a fun way. And I suppose one question, or I guess one confirmation that was cool to get, was the fact that, animals aren't part of this. Like, I feel like the show continuously reminds us of that, because Carol does go out of her way to ask, like, oh, like, this isn't one of you, right? And it's like, no. And they don't keep pets, so they kind of just let animals roam free. So I suppose they're okay as well with animals potentially killing people, if like wild animals killing people if they've gone into the wrong place or whatever, maybe the wolves and such, because that would lead to potentially more food for them too. Speaking of food, don't you just love trains?
Yes, we do love trains. Yeah, no, I was going to say, I do think this episode was very well written and well structured, because every single scene, Zosia and Carol are learning about each other, learning from each other, and us, the audience, and Carol are learning something crucial about the hive mind. And everything Carol learns about the hive mind sometimes is bringing her closer to Zosia as well, particularly, in the massage scene where she's really trying to get into her head as to what everything feels like.
Yeah.
And she does learn that they do have individual sensations, even though they know everything that's going on in the overall consciousness and what everyone else is going through. And yeah, I mean, I just think the fact that they're able to take all these conversations and do all of that at the same time was really impressive, and why this episode is very dense when you break everything down.
The density is fun to explore because I think the audience has also had certain questions. It's like, okay, how does feeling work? Like, when one of you feels something, do you all feel it? Like, are your synapses connected in that way? Or is this more like an awareness thing? And I guess it is kind of like a mesh network. It's basically like they're all air tags in a sense. So it's like you have this awareness that something is happening, and then you know what to do about it. You're not necessarily having all the sensations all at once, but you're able to kind of get into each other's heads. And that's kind of an interesting mechanism. And I love the fact that they thought it out. Like, I love the fact that the writers really explored how this would truly function, because that's how you get good stories. Like, the best stories come from, hey, this is the world, this is how it exists, and these are the rules. Everything we write has to follow these rules. Everything that happens needs to be in context of what the world actually is like. Some of the best series I've ever seen are able to, be the best series I've ever seen because they've done this. One specific example that comes to mind is the Hunter x Hunter, and the fact that the power system in that show is so specific that it ends up creating some of the most interesting powers that we've ever seen in that medium. And I think that's really fun. One thing though, now that they are kind of, I'm saying they, now that which one is it?
Still they.
At this point?
I think you can just go back and forth. I think I saw someone call her the Zo Hive,
Right, that's fantastic. Right. I think somebody called Carol and Zosia Stersha as like a relationship name.
My friend literally came up with that, and I spearheaded it because I was like, what are we going to call Zosia and Carol? Because people have been critical of just putting one word in front of the other, like Zosia Carol, because there was like Mark Helly's or Mark Gemma's for Severance in terms of like the ship names. So then I was like, we should go back to combining. And then my friend was like, oh, what if we did Stersha? Because I think some of the other names kind of sounded like pharmaceutical drugs. Like if you tried to do like Xarol or like Karosha, like that sounds like
kind of like Karsha. Maybe
Yeah,
Karsha.
I guess you would kind of need I guess we were coming up with Karosha, and that definitely sounds like some kind of
That does
pill you
sound
would
like a
take for
drug.
sure.
It
Yeah.
sounds like some kind of insecticide, actually. But yeah, that's a little crazy. But
So
yeah, I
funny.
think as we learn about the Hive actually tells us a little bit about their origins, right? And we see that they talk about where they've come from. And what was that like for you to actually hear them discuss that and say that, okay, we don't know what's going on there, but the diameter of their planet is probably double the size of the Earth. It's probably one big ocean. We don't know why we came from there or who sent us, whatever the case may be, but we love everyone there and we would love to meet them. And I'm just like, wow. So we're now fully acknowledging that these are aliens, right? And then you go back to it brings you back to kind of Manousos' whole philosophy of nothing belongs to you, you don't belong here. And he sees them as some otherworldly threat. And while I hesitate to call them aliens, I feel like this
Yeah.
kind of did come from outside the planet based on what they're telling us. I mean, is that what we should is that how we should process this?
I don't quite go there. I mean, and like we did know that the signal came from space anyways. We
Yes.
just kind of learned more about the planet
Mm-hmm.
itself and that it's maybe like a water planet, and then that they have their biological imperative. They are a virus. It's just to spread. Again, they don't even know exactly why they got it, but all they know is that it's so great. They love it so much. They have to spread it. And that's just how a virus works. Like, even if they might die out on this planet from starvation, their goal is to just keep spreading. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
I just still hesitate with calling them aliens because, yes, we know
So
it comes
do
from
I.
outer
Yeah.
space, but I don't know if they're really programmed to act a certain way. Like, I don't think they're body snatched. Like, I feel like there's a difference between we're body snatched or we're just all connected. And again, I think everyone has that idea of, well, if there's murderers and bad people in here, then how could this actually be some big soup of people? But
Mm-hmm.
again, I just don't know if the show is almost trying to give us this idealistic view of, if you combined everyone, there's no judgment, there's no uh there's no like fighting because you're one person and you can just come up with an answer because you're one. Would you just land on these nicer ideals? Or is there like an actual program in the virus that is making you love everyone and making you feel that way? And I don't think that part is answered really. Like, I think that is still a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, it isn't. And I don't know when we'll get such an answer. I think it's I think it makes sense that we're getting the questions, or at least we're getting answers that lead to more questions. But I think it's probably setting things up for like a later season. Of course, the show has been renewed for a while, so we
Yeah.
will we'll get some answers, at least some exploration at some point. And yeah,
Yeah, I think we will as they look for ways to fix this, right? But in another way, I'm not even sure how detailed this show will even go, right?
yeah,
If
they
you're
might leave
kind
it
of
up to the
just
audience to figure out.
if you're kind of just stuck in one point of view, and if Carol or Zosia can never figure it out, I mean, they have all of the scientific minds in the world working together, and they don't even really know. So it might just be like, again, I keep making the comparison to The Leftovers, but it might just be like The Leftovers, where there is a mysterious event. Like in that show, we didn't know why 2% of the population disappeared. It just happened, and the whole show was just exploring the effects of that. And I do think this show could be the same way, and I don't care either way. I really would be fine if the show didn't explain these things, and I also would be fine if they did. That would be interesting. So I'm open either way.
Yeah, I did think it was fun for them to kind of talk to each other and learn about these things in that specific way. Um, I remember when they were doing like all the hiking, like even after the spa and all that, and it's like, okay, they're trying out different things. I don't know if this was like it felt like it could have been, you know, Carol showing the world all the things that she liked to do. It could also have been, you know, the world and Zosia showing Carol what like things that they believe she would like, So
Yeah, I have to think, we don't know how they ended up on their lovely hike in front of the trains, but they didn't, that's the most interesting detail, right? Is that the Hive they don't know everything about Carol. And we know that because they
Yes.
only know things
That
from Helen's point of view or
and
any
other
other
people. Yeah.
family members or friends. And that is such an interesting realization from Carol that there are things in her life still that she's never shared with
Told anyone.
anyone.
Yeah.
And she gets to share that she loves the sound of trains because it's the loneliest sound in the world, which is
Says a lot
very
about her, doesn't
fitting
it?
for Carol. Yeah. And again, we'll kind of get into this more with other parts of the show, but this is exciting for Zosia. This is exciting for the Hive mind.
And you
They
can
love
feel
that
that
they can,
excitement. You can
yes,
feel it
they
like it's like,
love
oh
that
my
they
God,
can
like
learn. They love that they can learn something new because life is a little boring for them. They know everything. There's little things
yeah.
they don't know, like they don't know the origins of the game Spit because there's some things that have fallen through the cracks in humanity. But
Uh-huh.
overall, they know everything and there's nothing fun. So I see that as like the beauty and the tragedy of this whole relationship because actually, I think if the Hive mind had a choice, they would love for Carol to stay outside of it because
Mm-hmm.
Carol is providing excitement, wonder, a sense of discovery. She provides art when she starts to write her book, and that's like the most exciting thing in the world to them. And yet, it is their biological imperative to bring her in. But bringing her in is going to make them lose these experiences that have been the only mentally and emotionally stimulating thing they've experienced. So I think that is that's so juicy. I love
And
it.
it's ironic, right? Because the thing that they're enjoying the most is antithetical to their existence and this biological imperative. So it's almost
Mhm.
as if by enjoying spending time with Carol, they are proving Carol right. Because having two different individuals in a place, in a relationship, is what enriches life. Because you
Mhm.
need that variety. You need that chance to explore things. You need the chance to learn new things. You need the chance to enjoy art. I keep thinking about that comment on one of our previous episodes and our previous discussions where somebody was literally asking, does this mean art is dead now? And that's really stuck with me because I was thinking it too. In a way, I suppose it is, or we've gotten some confirmation that it might be because the Hive essentially needs art. Like they're excited by this idea, and you can see that in Zosha's face, which Carolina Vidra is doing an amazing job here, just
Mhm.
exploring all the different things, like playing one person, playing 7 billion people, doing everything that she has to do while also knowing so little about what she wants to know, while also knowing everything about everything else. It's
Mhm.
such a weird place to be, and you know I'm actually thinking about another comment that we got from somebody who was saying that this virus, the Hive, is essentially like a planet destroying virus. It's something that I thought about as well on some level, but probably not quite to the degree that this person did, because this person is essentially saying that because of the way the Hive operates, they essentially get sent to different planets and then they weaken the species there by essentially making everybody one person and then allowing them all to die of starvation within 10 years, which to a planet destroying virus is not that much time. And then something else can come in and take over. So it's basically like a planet destroyer, like a world ender. And I feel like that's an interesting idea. I don't know where that's going to go or if that's going to be something that comes to fruition at all, especially since we like we said we got some insight as to where the Hive came from here. But there's still an elephant in the room, which is why Carol and the other 12 can't join them, at least not naturally, right? So that's
Yeah,
something that the show is going to reveal at some point. So we might still get some of these cosmic answers at some point.
that's true. I also have this idea of, I mean, when you just think about evolution and biology, sometimes life is so random, right? Sometimes there are just random, random new elements that come out when things are reproducing. And sometimes there's like no reason for it. And so I'm just
Hmm.
kind of reminded of life and how things work out. Like, why did humans, well, actually, it's sort of like survival of the fittest, and elements that you have that are more like beneficial to surviving, like live out. But I just wonder almost like how random it is, like how random evolution can be sometimes, right? Like one of my favorite books as a kid was his Dark Materials, and in one
Good
world
choice.
there's like a world where there's like these weird kind of elephant creatures, and they run around on wheels, and they have like a diamond structured body instead of like a bipedal body, but they are the people, like they are sentient, they have a language, and it's just like random that it developed that way. And I just wonder if there's something, just somehow this virus just like came about on one planet and now it's just going around, and there's not even a rhyme or reason. I think that's also an option. But I wonder if we should, I don't know, should we go to like the croquet or the diner? I think the croquet into the diner,
Mm-hmm.
into their fight is really the turning point here, because I feel like up
Yep.
until this up until this point, Carol is taking notes on everything with Zosia, and
It's fun and
I
games.
yeah, but the thing is, I know some people are going to try and read this one way, where they're going to see Carol as manipulative, or like this was all for show to get information from her. And I definitely don't see it that way in the performance. I think you have to see the two sides here, that there are two things that can be true, which is that she absolutely is feeling very genuine feelings for Zosia,
Yeah.
but she cannot let go of this duty to save the world. But
Mm-hmm.
I think she is really struggling to reconcile those things. I think it's very, very notable that after their first kind of, not when they sleep together, but after their night together where they're sleeping in the big communal hive place, and they say, like, I had a nice time too. And that's very kind of reminiscent of a first date, like you said. That is when Carol runs to the whiteboard and writes, "They eat people," in all caps. And think
Yeah.
about it.
She's
She has
trying to
known
make sure
that.
she doesn't forget, and she feels like they're
But
trying
the
to
thing
distract
is,
her,
she has known that information for 30 plus days, but she
and she
chose to
never wrote
write
it
it
then. Yeah.
right then and there, because I think she was like, oh no, I'm feeling things. I need to go remind myself of
Yeah.
my mission. So it's very
Exactly.
notable there. But the day of them playing croquet, and Zosha's like learning her sense of humor. Because earlier in the episode, when they're playing cards, Carol's like, "Are you letting me win, or do you just suck?" And Zosha's like, "Well, play and you'll see." So she's already kind of learning how to like leave that sense of mystery and not just be a
Mm-hmm.
machine yes man
Trying
to
to
Carol.
kind of respond to what Carol likes, so to speak.
Yeah, and then she does it to her in a very openly teasing way when they're playing croquet, because Carol's like, "Is this fair that you have all the combined knowledge of all the biggest croquet champions in the world?" And she's like, "Well, maybe you just suck, Carol." And she puts "You suck, Carol" on the big sign in the back, and I was like, "Oh, that's a big step for Zosia
Yeah.
and the Hive." Like they know exactly what to say to Carol. And
To
on the
get her
one
to
hand,
respond.
again, people might see it as manipulative, but I think that that's almost just how you meet. That's how you operate with people in real life. Like, as you get to know a friend, if they have a dark sense of humor, then you're going to start integrating a dark sense of humor when you talk to a friend, or if they're sarcastic, then you'll start being a little more sarcastic. So I
Yep.
actually don't necessarily think it's as like nefarious as people might read. I think it's literally just how you develop a relationship with someone.
I agree. Yeah. You develop a relationship by kind of learning what the person responds to and trying to love them in the way that they sort of need to be loved. And, you know, Zosia and the Hive are trying to do that for Carol in a way that will keep Carol comfortable and, you know, not have her running for the exits, I suppose. So there's definitely a lot to be said for that. I do wonder though, you know, does Carol need to be a hero? Like, is she trying to be one? This whole thing of like, okay, I need to remind myself why this is happening. I need to remind myself that this happened to me and it happened to everyone and I need to save the world. You know, I think there's an interesting comparison to Manousos, who we'll talk about soon. In the sense that he is unwavering and uncompromising. And Carol feels herself starting to make compromises, and she's trying to fight that. I wonder if that makes her different from Manousos in a certain way. And I wonder if that kind of shows us two different sides of what a hero can be in this new world, assuming they were trying to free everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think they both have their strengths and their flaws, right? Because Manousos is unwavering, and that is commendable. But he's probably learning less about the Hive because he won't even interact with them. So he could never really figure this out if he didn't make the journey to Carol. And even then, he was only making the journey to Carol because the Hive mind saved him and brought him to a hospital that would allow him to drive straight there. So he really wasn't able to do that on his own. And as we know, like, it's really only going to be the combined knowledge of Manousos with his radio wave knowledge and Carol with her actual intimate knowledge of the Hive mind that will give them any chance of figuring this out. And I think that's interesting too, that you have both these loners, and yet you're gonna need the community and the connection to figure this out in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, and then Carol just fits more strongly into the reluctant hero, because I think Ray Seahorn always says in interviews, you know, back in episode 2, that Carol just showed up to this meeting expecting to bring chips and dip to the revolution. Like, she really didn't expect to have to lead this, because she thought, just by common rational thought, everyone would agree that this is insane, but they don't. And then she's like, well, I do care about individuality, and more people should care about these basic facets of humanity. Like, you should experience grief, you should experience disappointment. Those are like facets of human life that we should all experience, or there's no real happiness, there's no culture, there's no religions, there's nothing that makes us human. So I think it's just this very basic sort of drive that she feels a responsibility to. But I think the problem with this episode is that she has not been happy for her entire life. And what's interesting is that as much as the Hive mind is trying to distract her by getting her to write, by initiating this relationship, it is also true, as Zosia says, that they love Waikaro, they love Carol. Those things coexist, and ultimately they are not wrong as to what makes Carol happy. They are not wrong in encouraging her to write Waikaro, because that is the happiest I have ever seen Carol on this show, is when she felt free to be herself and geek out over her own books. Because
even though she doesn't like the Waikaro series all that much,
she loves her books.
That's the thing. She loves it, but she kind of has convinced herself that she's writing meaningless nonsense. You know?
Yeah, I think she's convinced herself as a form of self-loathing, because and I think Ray's touched on this too, of like, if you punch down on yourself first, then other people can't hurt you that much.
Exactly.
Because she knows in society these are kind of looked at as fluff. They're not taken that seriously. And I think obviously she has a bit of like low self-esteem, a low estimation of herself. So it's just easier to be like, yeah, these are crap. So then if other people say they're crap, she can be like, well, yeah, you're right. I think that too. So, you know, that's just how I feel. Don't worry, I'll have my serious book soon. But I mean, I thought it was just so, like, out of every scene in the show, I think that really moved me the most, you know, to kind of have this moment where, for like the first time in your life, you can just be proud of what you've made. She gender bends Raban into Rabana, so she's kind of like living her truth more there in terms of writing what she originally
I did not expect to win in that
write.
way. I'm like, wow, this is not me actually getting that. That's crazy.
People will be so excited. I've seen like so many people like, I mean, almost joke about that happening, not even thinking that the show would go there and make it happen.
It's fun, because especially since they have a way to make it work canonically. You know, Zosia's like, are you going to retcon it? You know, and then she starts suggesting all these different things, which shows that, they did read the books. Because Carol was like, you didn't read my books. Like, no, they read the books. They know everything. And it's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's that sense of discovery, too, and the importance of art, like we talked about. Like, Zosia, again, that's maybe the most excited we've seen Zosia, too, to figure out this puzzle that Carol has presented to her. And they're so excited to have something new to read. So I think it is really interesting that they are making each other happy, and yet there's this impending sense of doom because this can only run on borrowed time. Like, they are both trying to change each other, and when they do, a lot of their happiness will all their happiness will go away, basically, right? Like, if Zosia brings her into the Hive, no more sense of discovery, no more art, they don't get any of this mental stimulation. And if Carol reverses this, then Zosia is no longer Zosia as we know her. I don't know exactly how it'll work, like if she'll have any memories of her time in the Hive mind, but we know nothing about real Zosia except for these, I guess we can talk about that now, the details that we get after the time jump in their kind of domestic kitchen scene.
And how much of a jump are we looking at here? It's not that long. It's not that long, but it's long enough.
Yeah, it was like 12 days because I think we start off at 48 and then we jump to 60 days.
Yes. Okay. So as we do that, I actually would like to talk a little bit about romance. So
yes,
we've talked about how all of this has felt like a series of dates, getting to know each other. You know, it's like, it's just this idea of like, yeah, you've known someone vaguely for like a little while, and then you didn't really want to talk to them, even though you thought maybe you might want to talk to them, and then you avoided them, and now you started actually speaking, and then it turns out you really like them, and now you're kind of dating, and you wonder how you got here, and this is what's happening to Carol. And the Hive essentially is, I mean, granted, they have the knowledge of everyone ever, but this notion that they're so good at just wowing and spoiling Carol is just funny to me, because Carol's in this car, right? They get to this diner, and then over time she's starting to realize all the different things as to, why this diner was special to her. She's telling Zosia, and Zosia definitely still doesn't know everything. The Hive doesn't know everything about why Carol likes this diner. There's only so much they can know, but they are aware of what the place was. So it's funny to me that in the course of that, Carol literally remembers, oh wait, this place stopped existing. Like, the place burned down. The waitress Bree, she's obviously not here anymore, but she was great to me. But then she's starting to look like, oh, Bree is here, first of all. And the place exists. It's like, wait, so how did you do that? Did you rebuild? It's like, yeah, we rebuilt it for you. It's just like, whoa, hold on. Like, this is new levels of like, if they wanted to, they would. Like,
right?
This is crazy. I'm like, okay, wait. So we are living in a world now where, anything is possible because they can make anything possible. And Carol is the recipient of that. Like, there's literally nothing that she cannot access. And I think there is something about that being overwhelming that is amazing to her, but it's also absolutely terrifying, because that's when she leaves, right? That's when she goes back and she's like, okay, I can't deal with this. There is a sense of guilt. And then she starts asking all these questions. First of all, why she take Zosia's car? Like, that wasn't nice. But anyway, she gets back and she offers Zosia a drink. She's like, okay, what's going on? Why is this happening? Are you trying to distract me? Do you think I don't know that I'm still trying to get rid of you guys? And then she's like, yeah, we know you haven't given up. And it's funny to me how the internet finally getting everything it wants, Carol and Zosia actually locking lips, right? That is initiated by Zosia. So on some level, it's like, okay, all the people who are saying that the Hive is manipulating Carol, they're probably going to have a bit of a field day with this. But there are some people who think that Carol is trying to manipulate the Hive. And you have this mix of perspectives where these two sides want the same thing, but like, the reasons that they want them are kind of getting mishmashed here, because the Hive wants Carol to give up on trying to get rid of them, even though they kind of want Carol to retain her individuality so that they can still have Carol. Meanwhile, Carol is scared of the feelings that she may be having for Zosia, Rabana, and by extension, the Hive. So it's like, okay, what do we do here? And then Zosia is like, okay, the way to kind of calm this down is like, we can feel what you feel for us. So it's like, let's just go ahead and do it and see what happens. And obviously Carol is scared at first, but then she absolutely dives in. And it's very interesting to me that it's the next morning that she's like, oh, would you like to read the first chapter? And it's like, oh my God, they got her.
Yeah, how I
they
read
got
that,
her. They did it.
but that's what's so fascinating
so
here,
wild,
because
right?
Carol knows exactly what she's doing. She's
Uh-huh.
aware of that. And, it's no coincidence that she starts writing Why Carl that she starts writing Why Caro right after, because I think she's just leaning into it. I think once she initiates that kiss, they sleep together. I think she's like, I'm just gonna go for this. Like, they are right in what makes
It's
me
like,
happy,
I have nothing
because
to lose in
I
this
had
regard.
this experience in the diner where I was transported back to this period of time in my life where I was happy, and now I can almost, I don't want to say get a do-over, but kind of bring myself back to that point in my life. And yeah, I think throughout that whole sort of argument that kind of leads into their first kiss, she is, she's struggling with those feelings, and I think she wants to lean into it. The only reason that she's hesitant is because she's like, her principles, again, this is unsustainable. You can't even pick an apple off a tree, so it would be, I'd be not doing my duty if I didn't try to stop this.
Yeah.
And when she says someone has to put the world right, even if it means you all leave me again, that's like the last thing she's able to get out before she starts crying and Zosia initiates it. So on one level, I feel like it's Zosia saying, we won't leave you again, like, we're here, because it's in response to that line. But I also think she is just giving her permission. Like, I think she's giving her permission of, like, you can choose this path. Like, you can choose the path that makes you happy. And of course, that's what the Hive wants. But I think that's why she sort of kisses her and then, like, just waits. She's like, I'm
Like,
giving
what are
you
you gonna do
permission
about
here, and now you can choose this or you cannot. And I think for maybe the first time in her life, Carol's like, let me just choose my own happiness here. And whatever. I know some people will be like, she's abandoning her duty. But you know what? At this point, no one really wants her to save the world except for Manousos, who she doesn't know is coming
until the
at
end.
this point in time. And so it's kind of like, yeah, why don't you choose happiness for like 5 minutes of your life? I'm okay with that.
Oh, wow. It's fun. It's really well written. I can't help but commend them for doing it that way, because Carol is making choices and she's able to explore, happiness, even if it's for a brief moment, because we don't know how much tumult the arrival of Manousos is going to actually bring into her life. We know that it's going to be chaotic. We know that he's coming with a vengeance, if not a purpose. So, he is looking for something, and he's looking for an ally. And with the kind of journey he's had, like, he's almost died on this journey. It's so arduous. And he finally makes it there, which is, again, hilarious, because obviously he could have gotten there in less than a day, but he chose to do what he did. And we know why he did it, but it's also funny because he took so much time, Carol has now changed a little bit from the person who tried to call him from that plane ride back to New Mexico in episode 3. So, yeah, there's a lot to sink our teeth into there.
Yeah, I definitely have some theories as to where it should go. I do wonder if we should just jump back to the kitchen scene quick when we do the time jump, because there's a lot going on here, because now we've time jumped. We see how domestic they are, so clearly they've
like I said, common law.
Yeah, they're cooking for each other, and Carol's like, "Are you like cooking for two?" Because she wants Zosia to eat with her. She doesn't want her drinking her people milk. And she's like, I don't want to be reminded of that. Like, please just eat like a normal person with me.
When the train goes by, she's like, food distribution. And then that's like real comedy. That's actual comedy in the episode. Where like they just look at each other. It's like, oh yeah, let's not talk about that. That is too funny, man. Oh
that's
my God.
The elephant in the room that always exists. She's like, I'm just gonna forget that you were kind of like a cannibal for a bit, if that's how we're categorizing it. But at this point in time, I briefly mentioned the pronouns earlier, but she's like training Zosia like a dog to use like I pronouns, like the Pavlov effect.
Bruh.
But she's finally like she stutters a little bit still, but like she's a lot more comfortable with using the I pronouns, and she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to know about you, Zosia. So again, she's trying to see her as an individual very badly, and she asks her what her favorite food is. And, she says, I love mango ice cream. And she tells this story where, there's an old man in her neighborhood who sold it out of a cart in, I don't know how to pronounce it, but a town in Poland. So confirmed she is Polish, like
She is
the
Polish,
actress.
yes.
We learned that she didn't come from wealthy means, because they would give her free ice cream bars, and, to the
I wonder what
kids
she
because
was
it was
doing in
after.
Morocco.
Yeah, I guess she's like a traveler.
Maybe.
Yeah, but yeah, so they didn't have like money for them, so the guy would give them out for free. And then this is my favorite detail, is that she loved to see the giant ships rolling in and out. And what does Carol write about? Pirate
Giant
ships.
ships.
And I'm like, oh my God, there are commonalities that are transcending the Hive mind right now.
They chose her for a reason. Like they knew that it's fun to see that they didn't just choose Zosia because of how she looks. It's also about her origins and the things that, she might be able to find in common with
I
Carol.
know. I'm hoping, I don't know, I guess I'm a hopeless romantic, but I don't know how tragic they're going to make this, where there's that one detail and you're like, okay, that's a commonality, but how much else will they have in common? Like, did they choose her because she has some real stuff, or is that just sort of one thing that's there, but they'll be like way too different in real life? I don't know. I mean,
it's hard to say. I think now that they have this sort of rhythm, it's a question of whether the show is going to allow them to keep it or it's going to be ripped right from under us. And that kind of brings me to Manousos, because I know that a lot of people, first of all, I do think it's kind of funny that everybody's sort of expecting him to, not everybody, but there are a lot of people that have this assumption for whatever reason that he's just going to like be violent in some way. Like, I mean, sure, it's not impossible, but it's like, why is that some people's first thing? We literally have people asking, like, what if he kills Zosia? And I'm like, yeah, it could happen, but it might not. Like, we don't know, right? We don't know exactly where they're going to go with that. And he's coming, like he's ready for anything. At least he's trying to be ready for anything. For example, when we wake up with him at the start of the episode, as soon as I saw that scalpel, I knew that he would find the strength to hold it somehow. Like, holding a scalpel and expecting to fight is one thing, but instead he's given everything that he needs, right down to a literal invoice. And she asks him, like, will you be needing an itemized receipt? And he's like, yeah, sure. And they give him one, which is just funny to see. Like, even in that tense moment, that's just funny, because the guy who's being held at knife point is essentially just like talking calmly. Is like, oh yeah, you don't need to give us anything. You don't owe us. And I get reminded in such moments that is Zosia talking. Like, that is literally, that's Davis Taffler talking. That is them talking exactly as they would talk to, just about any of the other 12. That is Diabate's blonde chaperone talking. It's all of them, right? And, putting aside the fact that he would have to pay a little bit over $8,000 in medical bills because some problems are apparently universal. He has this need that is confirmed to us again, that debts be paid, right? And where do you actually think this need to never be in debt to anyone comes from? Because I'm sure there's something religious about it, but I think it's also something about his upbringing. And I think he has a sense of, I guess, responsibility that drives his belief system and his sense of morality. And I think that's going to be explored in episode 9 and in future seasons. But I'm curious as to how it's going to affect Carol.
Yeah, I think that will be her choice. And that's why it's all coming a little clear now in terms of like the last episode title of, the girl or the world.
Yes.
Carol maybe now being torn because now she has something that she'll lose by pairing up with the Manousos, both just in terms of like the Hive potentially fully abandoning her again and being alone, except for now this brand new person who you don't know, and this like newfound happiness she has. But again, the newfound happiness is already unsustainable, and I think she knows that. So I think that'll be
that's the
hard
tragedy
for her to give up, right? But I think she'll still go with Manousos, maybe, just because of that time limit that they already have. But I have a theory, which is that the phrase that he keeps repeating, and then like Apple even like tweeted a clip about this week, was where he says, wait, the girl saves the mouse from the trap. And I think the mouse is Zosia because the mouse is where the virus originated from. So I think that 100%, like, they could have used any animal for this analogy, right?
I did think about that too.
Like, the girl saves the fox from the trap. Like, that's the exact same sentiment, right? But using a different animal. But it's like they specifically used a mouse. So I think that's Zosia.
Is gray.
Yeah. And then I think that it would be... I think it would be Carol releasing Zosia from the Hive. Like, I think the Hive is the trap. I also thought maybe
she'd find a way to do that, though.
I know. Well, we didn't touch on this, but she talked about they communicate with the electromagnetic field, and I think that is the key here. Because well, there was I almost like hesitate to say this theory that was on Reddit because it almost seems like too real, but I guess there's been a lot of mentions of volcanoes on the show. Like, I don't have them off the top of my head, but there's been a lot of times where they've like
volcanic rock and ash. Yes. Yeah, we have gotten that. Yeah,
and then some other time, like I think on the plane, Carol says in like episode 2. But there's been weird mentions of volcanoes, and apparently that would be a place on the Earth where there's not as strong of a electromagnetic pull. Field.
Yeah, we do have that like in our bodies. Yeah,
yeah. I think also I thought it would be interesting if they went back up to the Arctic because, from my understanding, that would also be a place where it's kind of weak. I don't know if there's volcanoes up there.
I suppose we would know. We would know if Carol tries to suggest they go somewhere, but Zosia is unwilling because I think they have an understanding of what would stop, the Hive from existing, and they're doing their best to ensure that Carol doesn't figure it out because they can't lie to her. But they're like, please don't ask us certain questions, right? Please, Carol. Please, Carol. Please, Carol. So, yeah, it's something that they could discover maybe in like a future season. Maybe it will become clear at the end of the next episode. Who knows? But how quickly Carol will be able to do something about it is anyone's guess. Because, obviously Manousos has finally made it to the edge of the United States of America. And at this rate, he's going to be fairly disappointed in Carol, to say the least. So we have a lot that we might be able to guess / expect from their meeting in the finale. And there's this question of whether he is a hero or if Carol is a hero. Like, Carol's approach and mindset changed completely when she learned that she wasn't truly in any danger. So one might ask, was she ever truly about saving the world? And now you have this guy who's dead serious, like deadly serious about saving the world.
Yeah.
And he shows up at her doorstep. It's like, okay, what happens? Like, even when Zosia says to Carol, you're going to have a visitor, you could tell there was a little bit of trepidation. It's like, okay, the guy who's coming is a little problematic.
Yeah, she was like scared. Like, I think she looked, and then we got the sinister music playing over it. But then, of course, the way she acts, she like immediately puts on a smile when she shares the news. But she was definitely disturbed at first because, again, I think the Hive is kind of having fun with Carol. And she's like right where they want her. So, they know that this is coming to an end potentially. So I'm like nervous for the finale just because obviously I don't really want anything to happen to Zosia. And I feel like Carol, and I almost feel like a bad person for this, right? Because we should be rooting, if you are not pro Hive Mind, which I'm not pro Hive Mind, you should obviously be rooting for Zosia to be released from the Hive Mind. And yet I guess I'm a worse person than Carol. I was like, can we leave Zosia in the Hive Mind a little longer?
If Zosia is released from the Hive Mind, Zosia will not be the Zosia that you know.
Yeah, it's like a whole different character. And I think that's kind of sad to me because I love the Zo Hive. I love Zosia Hive. And now I'm like, oh no, it's going to be like a whole different performance from Carolina.
It literally has to be one or the other. Yeah, it would have to be one or the other. And I think the show creating that dichotomy and putting us in a situation where we don't want the Hive to succeed, but we want the results of their success to still be accessible to us. That's funny and it's fun, and it's also putting us in the same boat as Carol. Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting writing in that regard. The show has done a lot this week. This was like a very dense episode, but in a very casual way, and I like that. It makes me respect even less the people who are on Twitter talking about this show is now boring. I'm like, I'm very sorry for you. But I think...
Yeah, you can watch this a lot of times and glean a lot more details from it
like
every
time you watch an episode of this show, like you see things that you didn't see before. And that just shows how well they've layered things. And I definitely appreciate that. And a lot of people are watching the show, right? Because it's now been announced that Pluribus is Apple TV's most watched show ever, which is crazy, right? Like, this is beating out shows like Ted Lasso, Severance, of all things, right? Clearly, they've had an incredibly strong year this year. Like, they started off in January with Severance, they're ending off in December with Pluribus, and everything in between has just been one thing after another. Like, the morning show came back for a season. They had Chief of War with Jason Momoa, which actually was a fantastic show. I definitely enjoyed watching that.
Yeah.
And
Emmy winner, The Studio. Yeah.
The Studio as well. Your Friends and Neighbors. Like, this has actually been an incredible year for Apple TV. And at this point, it's almost like they're flexing. So I'm curious as to what's going to be happening. Like, there's a lot coming in, in this new year, both for them and for HBO, which, oh my God, don't even get me started on HBO and everything that's happening in that regard right now. I think
Apple TV is the place to be, I think. And I mean, I've heard from people that, work on productions with Apple, and they like working on them because they get the time and space to do what they want and the money to do what they want.
Yeah, and less money will give you that.
Apparently, it pays better for actors than other streamers. Like they said,
That's
like
good
Netflix pays you pennies, and you'll get more money from Apple even if you're like 4th, 5th, 6th on the call sheet than you would at like 2 or 3 on the call sheet at like Netflix, apparently. So,
I mean, they've always been particular about making sure that people are well compensated. It's one thing that they're known for, and they usually like to do things differently. Like, they have this whole image / idea that they project of wanting to take care of people. And even if it's not something that they actually desired, it would be antithetical for them to not at least try to make sure that was the thing. And the truth is, when you take care of your people, it pays dividends. And there are a lot of streamers that have not realized that yet. I'm curious as to how the whole Netflix, Paramount, Warner Brothers Discovery thing plays out. We literally do not even have the time for me to start ranting about that right now.
Yeah.
But I think that there's going to be sort of a new renaissance of very thoughtful scripts and very thoughtful shows that'll be coming in the new year. And I'm glad that a show like Pluribus can exist. And actually, you are very glad about that too, because do you not tour the Pluribus set?
Yeah, I mean, a replica of the set.
A replica of like the house.
I got invited to this like Apple TV behind the screen event in New York, and they had sort of these experiential exhibits for a bunch of their shows, or in movies, because they had an F1, the morning show, Severance, and Pluribus, and Pluribus was great. So they had like Carol's living room, or a replica of it, and they didn't do it for me, but I think they were getting some people's names, and like they would have the Davis, or an actor that was like pretending to be Davis Taffler, like call them through the screen, and they would like put their name up just like Carol's.
Oh wow, okay.
And then they had the dumpster with all the milk cartons. It wasn't like free flowing. They were kind of glued together with like some loose ones, but you could kind of go through and like take a picture. But then they did have real costumes from the set. So they had like Carol's leather jacket.
The iconic yellow jacket.
Yes, like, and they said that was like custom made. That was not a purchase. They have like Zosia's burlap sack, which like those shoes are worn, let me tell you. So she was going through stuff based on the state of those shoes. Zosia's blue dress, the like leopard getup that the girls all have in episode 2, like Diabate's harem, which she said is like literally because he's like a man on the prowl. So they like literally just went with leopard print because of that.
That's wild. And so apt.
Yeah, we got to. Oh my God, we spent like my friend Mitch and I. We literally spent like over an hour talking to the costume designer. So it was like the head costume designer Jennifer Bryan, and then the assistant costume designer Katie Murphy. They were like so nice to us. They were telling us so much stuff. They were like walking us through the lookbooks they've had, and it was really interesting because you could see how they had some like skirt options for Helen and like more skirt options for Zosia. And then once they landed on pants for Helen, they also like landed on more pant looks for Zosia. So they really are like intentionally like mirroring each other.
Yeah.
They also talked about, you know, how feminine or masculine Carol dresses and that she would dress more feminine at all of her book events so that so that Helen is seen as her manager. She doesn't want anything out there that would indicate that Helen is anything more than that. And so, like, you know, that's why she had a gala dress. Like, that would be from one of her book galas, and she would wear a dress there and not, like, a really nice suit, which, like, you could wear a really nice suit. I see plenty of women of all sexualities wear a nice suit, but, like, she doesn't even want to, like, entertain that idea at all. So, there's a lot of, like, intentionality behind everything. And, yeah, we had great conversations with them. They were, like, so kind to us. So just want to shout them out. And, yeah, if you guys are, like, analyzing the costumes on the show and, like, even the colors, like, it's absolutely, like, all intentional. So you're not doing too much if you are diving very deep.
Yeah, it's really fun, honestly. I think the palette of the show is very intentional, and I love that it's reflected in the costumes. The whole cast and crew, amazing. The people who work on the show are very thoughtful. This episode is actually written by Johnny Gomez and directed by Melissa Bernstein. No real relation, I guess, to Adam Bernstein, who directed episode 7. But I think there is a real vision here, and Vince has assembled a team that is absolutely thorough. Like, this is an all-star crew of people who are trying to tell an amazing story. And I like that that is working out in a way that results in, you know, useful information for the audience. That is a good place for us to call it today. We should probably close. I do have one final question for you, Cris.
Okay.
A few episodes ago, I mentioned Unity, which is the hive mind from Rick and Morty that Rick tends to be in an on and off relationship with. Now that Carol and Zosia have finally started to find a rhythm, do you see any similarities?
Yeah, I think there was definitely some in terms of how the hive mind is operating, how they're all moving as one. And I guess in how they're all aware of the relationship. I think the only difference really was like, I feel like they were all feeling like sexual pleasure from when he's with
the
his
feeling is different.
Girlfriend versus with Carol and Zosia. That, I don't know, it like is more of an individual
about awareness
thing
than feeling in
Yes,
Pluribus.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it feels like you can kind of still have your moment, but it's not everyone's like feeling it with you. So that's definitely a difference that is there to note.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you actually checked that out, because that's like it's a whole other perspective on this. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how things go in episode 9. So thank you all for listening up until this point. This has been a fantastic episode and a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Cris. Who knows what's going to happen? We can only guess. So I guess we'll see you on the other side. And for now, please enjoy breakfast.